Porsche fans, my 2021 Porsche Cayman GT4 has finally reached the engine break-in period. It's over 2,000 miles now, and for me, I think it's important to do an oil change to wash away that initial wear on the engine. Just so you know, Porsche doesn't even require an oil change after the break-in period. The first service interval is within 10,000 miles, and I just don't feel like waiting that long. So we're gonna change the oil on this, and I'm gonna show you all the details. It is a little different than the previous generation GT4, especially because of the underbody panels and a few other important facts that you need to know about. Also, if you have a 4.0 GTS, 718 Cayman, or Boxster, this video will be pretty helpful. All right, so I'm going to show you the supplies, the special tools, and the steps to getting the oil change done on your 718 GT4 and Spyder. Let's get started. As some of you may know, I like to do detailed how-tos here so that you have no questions on the procedure that you want to try to do yourself. And with that being said, I want you to know that knowledge comes from many places. Yes, I have experience with cars and I can apply it to new situations, but I don't know everything. And it's helpful to have information from people like you who post on Rennlist or Facebook groups to share what you already know. And with that being said, I want to thank Matt Mormon from Obsessed Garage. I think he sort of led the way on getting a nice oil change video out on his manual GT4. This is a PDK, but it doesn't really matter too much. But I hope to give you a little more succinct and detailed oil change than Matt did. But thanks, Matt, so far, everything you've done for the GT4 community. We appreciate it. Now on to the supplies and tools necessary to do this oil change right. This is in addition to the standard tools you would use for an oil change. Remember that all the supplies and the details are found in the description below or in banners below here at the bottom of the screen. So the first thing, of course, is oil. I've got 8 liters. That's how much you need. 8 liters of oil. And I've got 5W40 here. Porsche says you can use 0W40 depending on your climate. 5W40 is perfect for me. They also specify that this is the new C40 spec of oil. Previously, in the 981 GT4, it was A40 spec. What's the difference? Well, according to you guys who post in Rennlist, the discussion seems to point that the C40 spec is there to protect the gas particulate or OPF filters found on the 718 cars. Now in North America, those aren't even monitored, so some of us just get rid of those altogether and make the cars sound better. But other parts of the world, if you want to pass emissions, you need those filters running well, so I think you should probably use this oil. In America, can you just use the A40? Maybe, but it's up to you. However, I've still got a warranty on this car, and the manual says C40 spec, so that's what we're using. It is a little harder to find right now, but I'm sure it's going to be more and more widely available as the spec is more common. And it may be, I don't know, cost a couple dollars more. I didn't really price shop that. But I got the Motul because it was easier to find than the Mobil 1. Porsche likes Mobil 1. It's up to you. Motul's a great oil. All right, filter. When we do an oil change, we got to get a filter. So I picked this one up from Suncoast Parts, and it came with this rubber O-ring plus a new drain plug. Why a new drain plug? Well, the 718 GT4 and Spyder have a composite oil pan. Composite means plastic, folks, and therefore there's a plastic oil drain plug. And if that scares you, I understand. That means that this thing could easily strip, break, or cross thread, and that is definitely a bad situation to be in, and I feel you if you're scared of that. So they give you an extra one, and I think it's a good idea to either keep it as a backup or just replace it so you have a fresh one in there. You can use a flathead screwdriver on there, but that's not the proper tool for the job. And when something's this critical, I suggest you spend an extra 11 bucks and get the right tool. This is from ECS Tuning. It's the Schwab and T-handle plastic drain plug tool. The specific model number is in the description below. And that is the right tool for the job. Be sure to get it. You also want to remove the filter with a filter adapter like this because there's no room to get an oil filter wrench up there. There's too many components in the way, so you'll want this with a long extension to do it. This is the Hazit one. It's like $30 or $40. 2169 is the model number. I think it's the same on the GT3 and the previous gen GT4. There may be cheaper versions out there, so I'll put the specs down below and maybe you can shop for a similar one, but I knew this one was going to work, so I just bought it. Lastly, I'm going to be doing an oil analysis from Blackstone Labs. You get this for free. They only charge you when you send in the analysis. And I think it's important to have a look at that oil, especially after the first oil change, to make sure your engine is on the right track. And I'll do that every 2 or 3 oil changes just to be sure that the engine is running well. I'll post the results down below when I get them so you can compare them to your oil analysis results when you do yours. Okay, now let's quickly review the standard tools you need to get this job done in addition to these specific tools. The primary tools you're going to need are, of course, some ratchets. You can choose whatever one works for you, but no matter what, you'll need a 10mm socket, a deep is best, or you can use a shallow with a short extension. You also need a T25 Torx bit. This removes all the fasteners. By the way, getting under the car at one point requires low clearance. I love this gimbal ratchet. It's got plenty of room to give it good torque. You can find those in the description below. But there's so many fasteners, so I do suggest the DeWalt to get things done quick. You'll also need an extension. This is a wobble extension, one at least this long, but I ended up sticking this one on there too for a little extra length. You'll of course want some gloves because used oil is bad for you, and some paper towels to clean up any messes, and I highly suggest a 1-gallon Ziploc. I'll tell you more about that later. Also, to be extra safe, cover your eyes with safety goggles. Now, don't forget your standard oil change supplies like an oil drip pan and a funnel, but also a jack and jack stands. You know, I do have QuickJacks to raise the whole car all at once, but I found specifically for this car, I still needed to use the regular jack and jack stands to get part of the procedure done. All right, we have everything we need. Let's get on to the oil change procedure on my 21 Porsche Cayman GT4. So as with any oil change, the first thing is you need to lift the car, but it really should be level. I use QuickJacks. You may want to use either jack point jack stands or maybe lift bars. And these are all the ways you can lift all 4 corners of the Porsche so it can be level. If you don't, and you just raise the rear, you're gonna have oil left over in the oil pan and you're not gonna drain it completely. All right, so here is the underbody of the 718 GT4 thanks to Porsche. There are more body panels under here than the 981, and let's start with the first panel that is covering up the engine and the oil pan. That is right here. We need to remove this so we can get to the oil filter and drain the oil. But you can't remove that unless you remove this pan that's underneath the transmission. And you can't remove that one unless you remove the center section of the diffuser. All of these have to come off before you can even start to do the oil change. So let's take a look at all 3 panels and the 31, that's right, 31 fasteners required to be removed so you can get these off. We'll start by removing the center section of the rear diffuser. There are 6 T25 Torx screws holding it on. As I said before, having a power driver is really helpful because there are so many screws to remove. With the screws removed, you can just pull the diffuser center section straight back and put it aside. All right, now that we have that out of the way, we need to move on to the next section. The next section has 10 T25 Torx screws. There are 4 that you don't need to remove. These hold on the NACA ducts, but 2 of the screws are on the NACA ducts, so it can be a little misleading. Be sure to take a screenshot so you can look later when it's time to remove these. Once you remove one of these screws, you'll see they're different from the diffuser screws. The diffuser has fine threads, while all the rest of the screws are the coarse threaded ones, so you can't mix them up. As we remove the last screw, the panel will droop down and then it slides aft. And then you can just put that one aside. Here's that panel and the diffuser, and now let's tackle the last panel under the engine. Now this last panel can be a little tricky, and if you have a GTS, unfortunately, you're gonna have a similar panel to remove as well. There are 4 T25 Torx screws here, and then there are 2 more that I recommend removing on the panel ahead, not shown here. Then we have some 10mm bolts. Yeah, these are located up in these 2 holes at the top and left and right, and the silver portion on the bottom left and right. Then there's these 10mm plastic nuts located in the 4 blue sections. You'll spot them pretty easy, and they're holding the panel on some 1-inch studs. Now I thought having QuickJacks would make things easier, but check this out. The QuickJack is actually covering up my access to one of the T25 Torx screws. And here it is on the left side of the car as well. It's also blocking the 10mm plastic nuts on the sides. See this? There's no clearance to drop the pan down and get it away from the car. You have to drop it at least 1 inch to get it off the studs. So while the car is up on QuickJacks, let's remove all of the fasteners that we can while it's up in the air, and we'll attack the other ones later. If you're using the jack point jack stands or lift bars, you may actually be able to get all fasteners off, but I'm still not sure you'll be able to drop the pan with the jack stands in the way. Let's remove the 10mm bolts found here in the green circles. You'll need a deep 10mm socket or a socket with a short extension. They are up in these holes. They are the outer holes, the outermost holes, and this is the forward section of the pan. The other two are pretty easy to spot at the trailing edge of the pan. While you have your 10mm socket, go ahead and remove those plastic nuts at the forward section of the pan. Remember, there's two more on the sides, but I can't access them right now with my QuickJack. I'll attack them in a minute. For those of us with super convenient QuickJacks, this is the rather inconvenient part. You have to drop the car down, remove the QuickJacks, and use the good old traditional method of a jack and jack stand now to raise the vehicle so that you can still have access to the last T25 torque screw and 10mm plastic nut on each side of the car. Raise the car and support it. Remove this T25 torque screw that I couldn't access before and this 10mm nut. With those removed, especially the nut, you can now pull the tray down off of those 1-inch studs holding it in place. Now go to the other side of the car and use a small ratchet to remove the other T25 torques and plastic 10mm nut. Now you need to slide under the car in this section and drop the pan off of the center studs. I've put another jack stand kind of in between my jack, but even if the jack were to collapse, I have this jack stand here and I feel that's safe enough. If you don't think it's safe enough for you, choose another method. Note here the tongue and groove setup. You need to pull it down and then slide the engine pan away. To do that, you have to remove these two T25 torque screws here, which I never showed. Okay, once you get the pan completely released and off, you can pull it out the side of the car. You'll want plenty of room here to do so because the jack stands will be in the way of sliding it aft. Here is all 31 fasteners for all three of those panels that you just pulled off. Good job, you're halfway there. I'm gonna go ahead and clean my panels because I'm like that. I like to have them looking fresh even though I can't even see them. Okay, now to start the standard oil change procedure. Pop the rear hatch, remove the decorative cover on the right side, and remove the oil fill plug to allow air to flow in as you drain oil out the bottom. Set your pan under the composite drain pan and unscrew that plastic drain plug. It takes a 360-degree turn. What I love about the Schwab tool is it keeps the drain plug on the tool so you don't drop it in the pan. After a bit has come out, go ahead and grab your oil sample. They suggest grabbing it from about the middle of the drain. Once you've drained out as much oil as you think you can drain out, go ahead and plug it back up with that new plug that you got in the oil change kit from Suncoast Parts. You'll know it's locked in because there's a little green arrow here and it aligns with the line in the drain plug. Next, we'll remove the filter. So over on the driver's side, almost in line with the rear wheel, up above the frame, you're gonna see the oil filter housing. That's where the filter is inside that case. So use your Hazit tool and an extension or two and break it loose. Unscrew it most of the way, and then we're gonna use a method, thanks to Crazy Eddie of Edgards.
I could talk about cars all day.
And this is gonna help keep things clean. Use a 1-gallon Ziploc bag and wrap it around that oil filter housing and then unscrew the rest with your hand. This will keep oil from going all on your hand, down your arm, and all over the frame. And by the way, that stuff can be hot depending on how recently your engine was running. The plastic bag trick worked great. And not a drop spilled, oops, except for there. Back in my tool cart, I'm gonna separate the filter from the filter housing and dump out any excess oil into my drain pan. Clean up your filter housing, and we need to remove the O-ring around there, so just use a 90-degree pick or something, and then put the new one on. I like to put a little bit of fresh oil on the new O-ring to put it on easier. All right, now that that's on there, unpack your oil filter, and I prefer to try to saturate the filter with some oil if I can. It's not necessary, but some people do it. I found it easier to put the filter up against the engine first and then add the filter housing, and then tighten it down to 25 Newton meters. It's written right there on the housing. That's about 18.5 foot-pounds. But no matter what, it's not super tight. Remember that. I have to say, I really love these little Motul bottles. The integrated spout is handy. You just pull it out. You can take the cap off, put it back on, and store it for later. I think it's a really cool idea. I'd love to see more of that. Now, since I have a beautiful new interior, I'm gonna take every step possible to protect all that carpet. I'm gonna use some plastic from my dry cleaners, and I'm gonna put a nice t-shirt down in case it does drip out, and that will soak it up. Throw your funnel on and fill your oil. You wanna put in 7.5 liters to start. You don't wanna go more than that, just in case you didn't drain as much as you thought you did. Remember, this car does not have a dipstick, only a digital measurement on the multifunction display on the right side of the gauge cluster. And it's kind of picky on the conditions. So go to this page here and push the little stalk forward to select enter, down to get oil measurement, and if the conditions are right, you're gonna have an indication. The minimum shows about 7 liters and the top is 8 liters, and it looks pretty accurate based on what I poured in. So you might get unlucky enough to have this message because it doesn't want to read the oil. It seems to be a little picky. The conditions need to be that the car is level, that the car has been shut off for at least 1 minute. Don't ask me how I got it to show with the car running. And the oil temperature can't be too cold, it can't be too hot, it can't be shortly after running the engine hard, and don't forget, the rear hatch needs to be closed. Even with these things in mind, I feel like it still doesn't want to tell me my oil level. Okay, if you are happy with how much is in there, go ahead and take your funnel out, take away all your protective supplies, and close up the oil fill area. Wipe it down, put the decorative cover back on, and close the hatch. That was the easy part. Now it's time to do the little dance and put those underbody panels back on. We're gonna do the reverse. Raise the car up on jack and jack stands, get under there, and get things situated. You can usually get those plastic 10mm nuts on by hand, and that will hold things in place until you can raise the car with the QuickJacks. You can take this time to install the fasteners that will be covered by the QuickJacks on either side of the car, or you can do it later. Raise the car up again and finish the job. Again, a nice impact driver makes things go so much smoother. Once that one's done, work your way back. Let's do the pan that covers the transmission. Note these 3 little sections. They tuck under the forward pan. Once in place, I just hand started one of the screws, then finished it off with my impact driver and added all the other fasteners. All right, now that that one's on and secure, we need these fine threaded ones. Remember, these last 6 are for the rear diffuser middle section. Line up the diffuser middle section and it just slides forward with these tabs into the bumper. All right, that's it. You've just changed the oil on your GT4 Spyder, but there's one more thing to do. We need to reset that oil service indicator. You don't want it popping up early. You just changed the oil, but it doesn't know that. So I'm off to my buddy Crazy Eddie's house.
Yeah, I know, crazy.
He lives about 45 minutes away, and he has a tool that we are hoping will work, but honestly, I have my doubts, so let's see. He showed me this. It's the iCar Soft. He'd never even used it, so I opened it up and it was fairly intuitive. But when I went to pick a car, the 718 wasn't listed, nor was 992, just so you know. But 991 was on there and a 981, and so I just tried it. I made sure it was able to read the information off my car, like the VIN, and I reset the oil service indicator, and it confirmed that it was reset. So we think it worked, and next time I take it to Porsche for the one warranty oil change I get, I'll have them confirm if it was reset. All right, that's it for the 718 GT4 and Spyder oil change. I know a lot of you are totally skilled enough to knock this out on your own, but at least I hope this video saved you a few minutes, maybe a little less trial and error, especially getting those darn panels off. So if you appreciated this video, show me please by hitting the like button, consider subscribing, and hit that bell to be notified of future GT4 and Porsche content. Thanks so much for watching the Jet Fueling channel. We'll see you next time.